Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to our Insights program this evening with Dr. Professor Alan Zaremba from the College of Arts and Sciences within the Communications Department, and also he's overseer of the CPS, College of Professional Studies Communications Program. Professor Zaremba has been with the university for 29 years now. He has won 4 Excellence in Teaching Awards. He has also received a doctorate in organizational communication, and he is also the author of this book, The Madness of March, Bonding and Betting with the Boys in Las Vegas, which we will hear about this evening. So at this time, I would like to welcome Professor Alan Zaremba.
I want to move this because it's dangerous. So can I put it? Yeah, wait. I'm afraid it's going to knock it off. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate with this program. I appreciate the Alumni Association's interest in this, and everybody who came here is interested in my book. What I thought I'd do tonight is talk a little bit about how I got into writing a book about, I'm a professor of communication studies. How did I get involved in writing a book about college basketball? And then what I did. How I actually did the quote-unquote research for the book. What I discovered. What did I find out about people who go to Las Vegas to bet on college basketball games? And I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the quirky characters that I met, and there were many quirky characters when I was in Las Vegas. So many that I just came back actually from going to the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, and it doesn't seem as if I can run out of characters to write about, because there are many strange ducks who are big fans of college sport and are willing to behave almost childishly when they're rooting for their team. The experience in St. Louis was very interesting. And then I'm going to intersperse what I have to say with some sections and excerpts from the book. And I'll be glad to take questions when I'm done. So first, how did I get involved writing a book? I'm a communication studies professor. I've been here since 1981. I taught at the State University of New York College at Fredonia from 1976. I teach courses in public speaking. I teach courses about crisis and communication, intercultural communication, organizational communication. How am I involved writing a book about college basketball? Well, what happened was my brother contacted me, and he said that he had heard about an article that described 100 things to do before you die. And one of those things was to go to March Madness go to the first week of the NCAA tournament during March Madness. And then later I was reading an article in Sports Illustrated which made the same point. So I went. This is in 2001. And it was a gas. It was just as advertised. People were very idiosyncratic. It was a lot of fun. There was a tremendous amount of energy. And I said this was not advertised inappropriately. This is one of those things you should do before you die. I didn't go in 2002, but in 2003 I went again as a lark, not as a researcher. But sometime after 2003, I said, there's a book in this. People study communication. People who study communication also look at organizational culture. And people look at culture as well as culture in organizations, culture outside of organizations. And these people represented a distinctive culture. And I wanted to see if I could capture it. So in addition to going to the games as a fan, I became now a note taker. I carried around notes, and I tried to identify the very quirky characters that I met. I wrote a prospectus and I sent it to the University of Nebraska Press. They have an extensive sports list, and they were interested. So that's how I got involved writing a book about March Madness. What I did. When you go to March Madness, when you go to the tournament, you sit in casinos and you watch games. And what I did is I watched the games and I carried around yellow pads and made notes when I met somebody who was particularly idiosyncratic or had said something that I thought was noteworthy. I asked questions of people, why they were doing certain things. I became what's called a participant observer. I was participating in the process and observing the process. I met with sportsbook managers. A sportsbook is the place in Las Vegas where you can bet on basketball, football, anything. You can bet on games. And I wrote to each sportsbook manager on the Strip, and I asked them if they would be willing to talk to me. And 3 said they would. 1 said he would two said they would as long as I didn't identify them. And 1 said I could interview him and he didn't mind if I identified him. So I met with 3 of those managers. Then I went to the University of Nevada at Las Vegas's library, and they have a separate section on gambling. And in that separate section on gambling, you would be astonished at the journals, serious journals that appear in the library. For example, Blackjack Forum is a journal that appears in their library. The Journal of Gambling Studies, very serious academic journal. Strictly Slots, another magazine that was in the library. I left a note for the director and asked him to give me asked if it would be okay if I called him, and I subsequently did. So I spoke with Dr. David Schwartz, who is the head of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas collection on gambling studies. I think it's important to remember that initially I was one of them. I did not go to Las Vegas initially to write a book. I went to watch the basketball games. But as I got immersed in it, I found that this was, as I said, an intriguing subculture. My finding, essentially, was that these people are not degenerates. You know, the notion is people go out to Las Vegas, they drink too much, they swear too much. My feeling was, well, there were people who drank too much. And there were people who were not shy about being profane. I found that these people were interesting characters. You might not get that from this first excerpt I'm going to read, but as I proceed today, I think you'll see that most people who go to Las Vegas during March Madness are just fans. So let me set up this first part. It's from the prologue of the book. There are 2 sections. One part describes an event that took place in 2003. I was in Tampa, and I was flying to Las Vegas to meet my brother, who was flying to Las Vegas from Kennedy Airport. So let me just read this excerpt from the prologue of the book. The first weekend of the NCAA tournament brings a dedicated legion of basketball bettors to Las Vegas. From early Thursday morning until Sunday evening, men, and the crowd is overwhelmingly male, sit in rowdy, smoky casinos watching up to 48 college basketball games. Who are these people? They pay to fly out to Las Vegas, spend money on lodging, sit for 4 days straight watching basketball games, and often lose hundreds of dollars on near misses and if-onlys. And yet, as they taxi to the airport on Sunday, they are planning their betting strategy for the next year with undiminished passion. In March 2003, the NCAA considered canceling the NCAA tournament because the start of the games coincided with the beginning of the Iraq War. On Tuesday evening, March 18th, during an internationally televised address, President George Bush announced that Saddam Hussein had 24 hours to give himself up. You might remember this. He made an announcement. He had 24 hours to give himself up. If Hussein did not do so, sometime after the 24 hours had elapsed, the United States would strike. That was on a Tuesday night. On Wednesday night, 24 hours later to the minute, 2 plane loads of basketball bettors waited by an America West gate at New York's Kennedy Airport for their flight to Las Vegas. Both flights were completely sold out. Above the bar where the travelers were clustered, television anchors described the any minute now beginnings of war. The men at the bar paid no attention to newscaster Peter Jennings. They were looking at their NCAA tournament brackets. On Thursday morning, hours after the United States had launched its attack, the tension at the Tampa International Airport was palpable. Reporters randomly asked passengers if they were unnerved. Baggage underwent more scrutiny than usual, and security at the airport was extensive. I boarded my Southwest flight to Las Vegas with some anxiety. I was not settled into my seat for more than 2 minutes when a fellow in front of me, a stranger, turned around and asked me if I thought Marquette could cover the spread. Later that day, I was seated in the Paris Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard, the Strip, watching the games. The Paris Theater was filled with bettors from all over the country who apparently were not troubled by this international crisis. 4 movie screens were suspended from the ceiling above the stage. The well-oiled spectators who filled the theater were focused on the 4 basketball games projected on the giant screens. When Dan Rather periodically interrupted the contest with reports from Baghdad, the booing in the theater was deafening. Who are these guys? This is the second section of the prologue where I try to describe the characters that I will meet, and will describe. Who are these guys? Well, the first words he reads in the morning are in the sports section of the newspaper. He pores over these pages while drinking coffee, chewing his toast, and using the bathroom. He studies box scores like a scholar, examining minute details of important texts. At the end of the week, when he picks up the clutter that has accrued in the apartment, he finds folded up sports pages from days ago that have been left in the bathroom. He is familiar with the traditional fall, winter, spring, and summer seasonal designations, but nevertheless tends to identify portions of the year by what sport is played. Autumn is not so much autumn as it is football season. April does not mark the beginning of spring, but baseball season. His index to personal history uses this method to organize and recollect data. Sure, I remember when I had my last checkup. It was during football season. It was on the Monday after the game when the Packers beat the Bears in overtime. He can identify the entire rosters of the teams to which he has allegiance. He is buoyed by his team's victories and depressed by their defeats. On some nights, he cannot fall asleep after a close game that has ended in a loss, or after he has watched a particularly exciting contest. He's an unusually superstitious person. He stands on one foot when an opponent is shooting a crucial free throw because on a number of occasions, that posture has jinxed players at critical points. Near the end of an NFL playoff game, he once forbid the 15-year-old daughter of a friend from going to the bathroom because the teenager had been, up until then, seated in a place that he deemed to be a lucky spot. ESPN has been a godsend for him. Life before SportsCenter seems like a primitive era akin to a past when one had to live without indoor plumbing or electricity. His refrigerator magnets pin the menus from Chinese restaurants and submarine shops. The schedule for the Boston Red Sox obscures the emergency numbers for the fire and police department. When he first walked into a Las Vegas sportsbook on the morning of the initial Thursday of the NCAA basketball tournament, he felt like he was in heaven. So, in the prologue, what I do is I try to set up the characters that I subsequently meet. I went out on a Tuesday night, and I returned on Sunday night. So I was there for an entire day on Wednesday before the tournament began. This is in 2007. The book takes place in 2007 with some flashbacks. And then I report what happened on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as I went from one casino to another watching these games. So what did I discover in this observation? First, this trip was a vacation. This was not a gambling pursuit. Sure, people gambled, and everybody had a system. Everybody was a wise person telling me what exactly they would do in order to make money. I was mentioning earlier that there's a part of the book where I describe a scene where my brother told my uncle that he had a system for betting blackjack. And my uncle listened to him, nodded his head, and he said, "Young man, They send limousines for guys who have systems. So the idea is that everybody had a system, but you really can't win. If you factor in the cost of lodging, travel, the cost of that is going to exceed whatever an amateur bettor is going to win on betting the games. Most people have said, I found that most people say that they've gone for 5 years with the same crew, that they meet up with these people annually for this vacation. It's like going to Disneyland for them. All right. Again, these are fans, not seasoned bettors. Many of these people would not bet on their team because that was something they didn't want to take a risk on betting for their team. Most bets in Las Vegas are bets against the spread. The spread, they might root for their team if they were betting on the money line as opposed to the spread. Let me just do a brief, I'm not teaching people how to gamble here, but I just want to give you a brief tutorial on how this works. Okay. When you bet in Las Vegas on basketball games, you don't bet typically to see who won. I know that sounds strange to an uninitiated. You bet against a spread. All right? So what's a spread? Here's an example. Today, you follow a basketball. Marquette played St. John's. Right? The spread was 3.5 points. This meant that if you bet on Marquette, it wasn't good enough for Marquette to win. Marquette had to win by 3.5 points. Otherwise, you'd be a loser. This would be very disappointing to anybody in this room who bet on Marquette, because the final score today in the game was 57-55. Marquette beat St. John's. You root for Marquette, you're a winner. Wrong. You root for Marquette, you're a loser, because if you, even somebody in communication studies knows, if you subtract 3.5 from 57, you're going to get less than 55. So the final score becomes Marquette 53.5, and St. John's 55, you're a loser. So most of the people I met would not bet on their team, if their team was Marquette, because they didn't want to be in a position where they would be sad if their team won. If you bet on Marquette today and bet against the spread, you lost. So you'd be even though your team won. So I found that most of these people were fans. They would bet on somebody else's team with a spread. They might bet their team on the money line, which is another esoteric term, which all it means is, the money line means you're betting just to see who won, without the spread. But since what the spread is, the spread compensates for perceived imbalances. So if you're betting in Las Vegas, a bookmaker is saying, Marquette is 3.5 points better than St. John's, we'll even it up, now take your bet. They're laughing all the way to the bank. Because you can't win. You're betting on a flip of the coin with the spread. Nevertheless, there are a lot of people who are betting on the flip of the coin. Okay. So my point is that this was a fan subculture. These are not derelicts. They go out there to have fun. They're not going to make money, and they know they're not going to make money. They're going to hang out with their college buddies, eat chicken wings, drink beer, sit around, and that's what their idea of a good time is. And I'm not knocking it. It's fun to watch as well as it's fun to do. I don't know about watching games from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, which is what these people do, but for the people who go out there, it's a gas. I received a letter yesterday from someone who read the book who invited me to join his website. His website is a website of all people like him who go out annually to watch these games. All right. I thought I'd describe, the second excerpt I'm going to read is about fandom, that these people are true basketball fans, and I thought I would set it up this way. Okay. What happened was before I went out there in 2007, I went to the preliminary tournaments. I went to Northeastern's CAA tournament. I went to a day in the Big East. I wanted to learn from being on Media Row what it was like to follow these games and to meet certain real fanatics. So this excerpt takes place in Madison Square Garden. I am behind the scenes, literally behind the scenes, in a room that's set up underneath Madison Square Garden for media folks. And there's a cafeteria there. And I meet a true fan there who happens to be also working for the games. So this is an excerpt which I think describes fandom, people who are really nuts about college basketball. It is here in the cafeteria where I sit talking to a fellow named Roger from Syracuse, who was the chief executive officer of a company employed by the Big East. Just moments ago at a press conference, after the Syracuse-Connecticut game, I heard the predictable drivel from what happens is after the games, some of the players are interviewed by media folks, and they say the same thing about how they played the good D and that's why they won, or if they lost, how they didn't play the good D and that's why they lost. But you hear that, and then I've already heard this drivel, and now I'm speaking to Roger. Our conversation is interesting and entertaining. This young man, who is no more than 35 years old, is here to work the games, but is also enjoying the tournament as a general basketball enthusiast, and more significantly, a rabid fan of the Syracuse Orange. Roger is breathing easily because Syracuse has defeated the Connecticut Huskies in the first round. Roger describes the contest to me in tremendous detail, as only an informed zealot can. His recall of Syracuse statistics and minutiae is remarkable. When he completes the post-game analysis, I tell him that I am impressed. He says, "I'm a true fan." "You are," I say. "Got a funny story for you," he tells me. "You do?" "This is a funny story. Be good for your book. My wife will never let me forget this. It's a true story." "All right, true story. This will give you an idea of how far gone I am about Syracuse. You want to hear the story?" "Yeah, sure, I want to hear the story." "Okay. The year they won the tournament, 2002, 2003, I got into this thing, superstitious habit." "You're superstitious," I say. "When it comes to the Orange, I will do pretty much anything. This story will illustrate what I'm talking about here." He takes a sip of a soft drink before continuing. "Okay, before the first game of the tournament, I was hungry. So I ate 2 hot dogs before tip-off. We win the game. So I remember this before the second game, which, is only 2 days later. I figured since we won the first game after I ate the hot dogs, just to be safe, I should eat 2 hot dogs before the second game also. So I eat 2 hot dogs before the second game. We win again. Now we have won 2 games after I've eaten 2 hot dogs. When the next round starts, I'm afraid not to eat the 2 hot dogs. You know where I'm going on this? I think so. I think you're going to be eating hot dogs all through the tournament." "Well, yeah, but there's more," he says. "Okay, so I've been eating these hot dogs, right? But now it's not good enough to only eat the 2 hot dogs. I have to remember if I put mustard and relish on them. And which I put on first, the mustard or the relish, so that I don't jinx the team by putting on the relish before the mustard if the last time I put on the mustard before the relish." "Sure," I say. "Wouldn't want to jinx the team." "Yeah, right, make fun. So I'm fixing these 2 hot dogs and eating them before the games, and we keep winning. Okay, it's the Kansas game, the final, Monday night. I don't know if it's nerves or what, but I developed this horrible stomach ache. Feels like a stomach virus. You ever have one of those? Can't hold anything down, don't want to eat anything, can't think of eating anything, can't even smell food without fear that you have to run to the toilet? You must have had these." "Sure, I've had them. They're awful." "Right, awful. Like you're always going to feel like you're always going to heave. Horrible." Right. Okay, I have the stomach virus type of thing before the Kansas game. Now I have a problem. I'm far gone because I think I have this problem." "What's the problem?" "The problem is, should I or shouldn't I eat the 2 hot dogs?" "You're kidding," I say. "Not kidding. You own your own company?" "Yeah, I own my own company." "Tell me you ate 2 smelly hot dogs with mustard and relish when you had a stomach virus." "I ate the hot dogs." "Took one for the team?" "Took one for the team. Could not let the Orange down." "You get sick?" "Got sick." "Threw up the hot dogs?" "Threw up the hot dogs. But we won the tournament." "Must have been the hot dogs," I say. "Who knows?" says Roger. I shake my head incredulously, but I should not have been so astonished. I have known Rogers before. The next day, I meet a fellow in Mickey Mantle's sports bar on Central Park South. He is dressed in an expensive suit. He tells me that he roots for the Pittsburgh Steelers. without much in the way of encouragement, he tells me that he always bets against the Steelers. I ask him why he always bets against the Steelers if he loves the Steelers. Here is his explanation. When I bet them to win, they lose. When I bet them to lose, they win. I don't want them to lose, so I bet them to lose. Because this way, either way, I win. I win if they win because I've bet them to lose. I win at least money if they lose because I bet them to lose. Either way, if I bet them to lose, I win. No smile accompanies this tortuous explanation, and no vocalizations acknowledge that what he is saying could be convoluted. He relays the rationale as if it is completely rational. So I think that these characters that I'm just described here were not uncommon. They were very typically zealots and fans and the kind of people that I met in Las Vegas. So I said I would describe some quirky characters, and I already have. Here, let me put them in categories. You had the pontificators, the people who were wise, who would always give me their wisdom, solicited or otherwise. One fellow gets up on a bar stool and he says, the dogs, the dogs, the dogs, the dogs, meaning you should always bet the underdogs, not the Huskies. I mean, he was saying the dogs, the dogs, the dogs, the dogs. Another fellow would tell me, be careful to bet before the stupid money comes to town. Be careful to bet before the stupid money comes to town. So what's the stupid money? People come to Las Vegas. They don't know. They bet on the wrong teams. It affects the spread. You want to bet before that stupid money comes to town, because if you bet before the stupid money gets down, you get a pure bet. Meanwhile, this guy hadn't won anything. And another fellow came in and he would say, only bet the money line. Only bet the money line. And he looks at me and he says, Rite State did not come here to lose. Rite State was like a 20-point underdog. Rite State. And when he first said it, I thought, okay. Then I realized nobody came here to lose. But people are going to lose. So his idea to bet the money line was very serious, finger in my face. Rite State did not come here to lose. They lost by about 25 points. I was looking for him just to ask him about his wisdom. So you had the pontificators. Then you had the screamers, people who are shouting. Now, we're not at the Olympics. We're watching these games on television. Nevertheless, people are yelling choke at somebody who's taking a foul shot. Or when the score is, let's say the score in the Marquette game was 59-55. It wasn't, but let's say it was 59-55, and St. John's had the ball, and you bet on Marquette. You don't want St. John's to take a shot. So people would scream, take a knee, so St. John's is not going to, or lose like a man. Don't take a shot because you want to win the spread. Then there was a fellow who every time there was something that looked a little curious, he would turn around and go, fix a Rooney. Fix a Rooney. That game's fixed. So you had those fellows. Then you had people who were self-effacing. People who came up to me and would say, you want to win? Bet against whoever I bet for. Because I always lose. Bet on a team that I'm not betting for, you're going to win. That's for sure, because I always lose. And they would say this to me while they're online to bet. So they're online to bet. They know they're going to lose. Tell me to bet against what they're doing because they always lose. And they were very, again, self-effacing. One fellow kept telling me, the only luck I have is bad luck. The only luck. And the line was long, so I had to listen to this mantra for the whole time we were waiting to get up to the line. There were some great T-shirts that I saw. I think the most telling one was one that read, good coaches win, great coaches cover. So the idea was a good coach wins, but a great coach covers the spread. Another fellow, with a very sober face, had a shirt that said, disguised as a responsible adult. Okay. Right. And then this last one, that's okay. All right. But it's got a good tone to it. All right. One Sunday morning, what I would do is I would try to engage. That's okay. One Sunday morning, and what I would do is I would try to engage people, and most people were willing to talk to me. Not everybody, but most people were willing to talk to me. and I see this Sourpuss sitting in a bar. And I figured I was going to ask him how he's done, but then I saw his T-shirt. And I said, I'm not going to talk to this guy. His T-shirt read, "My anger management class pisses me off." So I figured that when I saw that shirt, I said, okay, that's it for me. I'm not spending time talking to this fellow. To give you another idea about some quirky characters, I'm going to read this next excerpt about 3 students that I meet on a line from James Madison University. James Madison University is a university in Harrisonburg, and I'm on a very long line waiting to place a bet. And the reason I'm waiting to place the bet is because my alma mater, Albany, is playing. And I don't think Albany's going to win. In fact, but I don't want to bet against my alma mater. So I'm at the Flamingo Hotel, and I'm on this long line, and in front of me are these 3 characters from James Madison University, and behind me is a steel worker from Chicago. Directly in front of me in the queue are 3 buddies from James Madison University, a Virginia state school located in Harrisonburg. I overhear their chatter. One of them, whom the others refer to as Buster, says that North Texas has great athletes according to a fellow he met at a blackjack table the night before. Buster suggests to his friends that they place a $100 bet on North Texas because of this wisdom from someone he happened to be sitting adjacent to while they were both squandering their savings playing blackjack. One of the other Harrisonburg friends leaves as we wait on this interminable line, and then the friend returns with beer for his crew. It's 8:40 in the morning. Just like yesterday, this was on a Friday, just like yesterday at the Paris, these fellows hoist their brews and with amusement make the same toast I'd heard 24 hours before. Top of the morning, as they begin knocking their beer back. Behind me is an iron worker from Chicago. He tells me that he lost $4 grand on Duke losing to Virginia Commonwealth yesterday. I cannot believe that someone lost $4,000 in one day betting on these games. The expression on my face must reflect my disbelief because Mike from Chicago explains in more detail. I didn't actually lose $4,000. It's that I should have won $4,000. Which I lost because blanking Duke could not beat VCU. This is the expurgated version. I'm cleaning this up a little. He proceeds to tell me about this can't-miss parlay he had that only required for Duke to beat VCU. VCU against Duke. I mean, I'm talking the money line here, not the spread. Duke could not even beat VCU. Cost me $4,000. Mike from Chicago, now $4,000 short, continues to expound. He tells me that he travels the entire country working on one construction project or another, but he always comes to Las Vegas for March Madness. I tell the wife that I'm going out with $3 grand, and I tend to make $4 grand. How's it going this year, I say, more to be wise than anything else. He waves a paw and snorts. Forget about it, Duke. But I love Georgia Tech and Notre Dame today. As we continue to converse, I begin to wonder if Mike's wife doesn't figure it is worth the $3 grand just to get this guy out of the house for 4 days. Mike explains that he only bets the money line on the parlays because that's where you can make the cash. This information and betting strategy is at odds, of course, with the news that he has not yet won anything. Oblivious to this irony, Mike continues to explain the merits of moneyline betting. You're throwing your money away otherwise, says a man who is $4,000 in the hole by his own accounting. I can't get my bet in by 9:15 to bet on Albany, and it's a blessing, because I would have gone with Albany. Still, it's frustrating not to be able to place the wager. The Harrisonburg trio is furious because they aren't sure now if they will get the money down on the North Texas game, which is scheduled to start only a few minutes after the Albany-Virginia tip-off. You can't bet on a game once it's started. The Harrisonburg three know the North Texas game is a lock on the basis of the wisdom spewed about North Texas from someone at a blackjack table. The fellow at the front of the line seems to be asking many questions. Get the hell away from the window, screams Buster. He takes a swig from his beer and he shakes his head. Ah, what the hell, he says. This is better than contemporary political theory with Robinson. This gets around the laughter from his James Madison University pals. It is time for another toast. Here's to the poor bastards now sitting in contemporary political theory, says Buster. The boys from Harrisonburg drink up. And again, my feeling about this is that these guys are representative, and they're having a good time. Yeah, they betting on North Texas because somebody who was drunk at a blackjack table told you to bet on it seems less than logical. But these people weren't out there really to make a fortune. Okay. I told a cousin what I was doing, and he said, "So you're studying degenerates?" And I said, "No, I'm not studying degenerates." I told him that was not my sense. And I think a value of doing any kind of, this loosely would be ethnographic research, anytime you try to depict reality, is the value is you describe something in the way it actually is, as opposed to the way it seems to be if all you did was look at media representations of it. We in communication studies look at how the media affects perceptions, affects attitudes, and how it affects interpersonal communications. One of the values of doing any kind of description like this is you can tell your cousin, no, they're not degenerates. Yeah, are there people that drink too much? There are people who drink too much. Are there people who bet more than they should? There are. There are. And I describe some of these characters in the book. But by and large, these people are going to an amusement park. They enjoy the experience, and they're having a good time, and they could not possibly be losing the rent, otherwise they wouldn't be coming back annually and only on March Madness. They're having a good time. So the last excerpt I'm going to read is about how important it is to depict realities. What I'm going to read, there's a sports book manager named Charlie. His name wasn't Charlie, but he asked me not to use his name. So I'm calling him Charlie. He tells me that I should bet on Albany. And for reasons that I go into in the book, I know that this is a bad bet. But what he tells me is, he says that, let me get it exactly right. He says people bet because they listen to the media, and they listen to conversation, and they create an illusion of a team. He told me, it's not in this excerpt, but he told me that 5 55-year-old drunks could be playing for Kentucky, and people would still bet on Kentucky because the media represents Kentucky as a good team. This year, by the way, Kentucky is very good. They're not 5 50-year-old drunks. But to give a better example, this year North Carolina is weak. And he said people are going to bet on North Carolina if they were to make the tournament because they're North Carolina. And therefore, it's a matter of what you really want to do, says Charlie, is get the accurate scoop on a team. Charlie argued that the more that you know, the wiser you can be when making a bet. But what happens when what you think you know is merely a composite of inaccurate data? How good is Albany? What is Las Vegas? Who are the March Madness bettors? A key to understanding betting, bettors, culture, or anything is the ability to accurately depict realities and make distinctions between what is real and what are inaccurate constructions. So I think what I did in this book is I tried to create an accurate construction, an accurate picture of what it was like to go to Las Vegas and spend time with the March Madness bettors. Where has this taken me? Well, it's been a heady experience. Last year I was on the Only a Game radio NPR program. And I was nervous like a schoolboy going to that, listening to being interviewed on that program. I went to the Colonial Athletic Association tournament. As I mentioned, I did blogging for the University of Nebraska Press about the games. Last week, I was thrilled because Bill Brennan, the coach of the University of Vermont, had me on his the former coach for the University of Vermont, had me on his radio program. And he called me up. He wanted to know if I'd be interested and willing to, and I was delighted. As I mentioned, I went to the Missouri Valley Conference last weekend, and that was a gas. Meeting with people who were rooting for the University of Northern Iowa, you would think their life would end if the University of Northern Iowa would not win that game. In the semifinals, Wichita State beat Bradley, and in the other semifinal game, University of Northern Iowa beat Illinois State. Illinois State and Bradley are both red. Their colors are red. Well, after that game, it was like a red funeral. Looking at the people in the sideline, both red teams had lost, and they were just so despondent because, and it seemed as if they were all saying, "Why did we drive to St. Louis? Why did we come to St. Louis to be so dispirited?" So I think this has taken me places which have been interesting to me. I typically teach courses about organizational communication and crisis communication, but this has really given me a new approach to studying various phenomena and particularly looking at the relationship between sports and communication. So thank you very much for attending, and I'll be glad to take questions that you have.